Hello, everyone. We are just taking care of the final bits of getting going this morning. For those of you who are here, I want to thank you for taking the time out on your valuable Saturday morning to spend it with me. You may hear some funky. There we go. And it is all working. Excellent. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and proceed. The goal today was to take the technology up a notch and stream to both uh, the folks on YouTube and the folks on Facebook at the same time. Thought it was all set up. Technology failed me. I had to switch software at the very last minute to make it all work as I was hoping. But here we are. We are going, and we've got some interesting data. And one of the things that I like to look for are pivot points, right? Where enough things are happening that you think, there seems to be a fundamental change going on in what's happening in a market. I don't think we're quite there. This seems like a really slow burn pivot. I'm not going to claim that we've hit some sort of huge pivot point. But we've got some interesting data to share. We can also talk about anything else you're interested in. If you have a very specific question about our local markets, I'm happy to try to field any of those with you. As always, this is coffee and real estate. So today's beans are Ethiopian, and this is a brand new thing for me in terms of these beans. And the thing that drew them to me was that they were supposed to have this hint of raspberry in them. And and coffee as a thing is not, for me, it's like a caffeine delivery system, right? I'm not like a connoisseur of coffee, but I do like to try to make it taste as good as possible, which is one reason why I tend to lean towards mochas rather than just straight coffee. But this claimed that it had this raspberry flavor to it, and I thought, well, we'll see if they manage to do that. And believe it or not, they've actually done it, and I'm not sure what happens. I don't know if they just get stuck into a barrel with raspberries and left to sit for a long time, or how they do it. But this stuff is really good. I invite all of you to sit down, relax, chat with me about some real estate things. We can go ahead and jump into the usual stuff in terms of just covering the numbers. I realize that's the driest part of the show. But you know what? I guess it's kind of what needs to happen here. So let's go ahead and start looking at the numbers. Let's go ahead and look at just straight up for July right now, and then we'll look at the overtime stuff. You may notice a difference in the quality of the video, hopefully this time around. I've done a variety of different upgrades, everything from my monitor to a few other things that should make everything oh so wonderful. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in. Really interesting on total active listings. Now, active listings obviously is the total number of homes in a month that you as a buyer would have to choose from. And to look at it from the other side of the coin, it's how many homes you're competing with as a seller. And of course, that breaks down into what the qualities of the home are, right? So if you're a one bedroom, one bath home, you've got a whole different competitive profile than a 3 bedroom, 2 bath, right? There are just a ton more people looking for a 3 bed, 2 bath than a 1 bed, 1 bath, right? So just to sort of calibrate you, none of those things are actually taken into account here. This is all residential homes that are single family homes, townhomes, and condominiums, right? So the kind of the whole bowl of wax in terms of your typical residential homes. Those are the numbers that I'm running here. Now for Santa Clara County, we saw an overall drop of 22% in the total number of homes available this time of the year compared to the same time last year. And another thing to point out for folks that might be new to the live chat, I like to pick the exact same period of time from the previous year to try and eliminate seasonal influences, right? Whatever a seasonal influence is in July of 2020 is likely to be the same seasonal influences of July 2021. Now, of course, we've also got other weird things that are playing into this mix in terms of levels of COVID restrictions and that type of thing. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But a 22% drop in the total number of listings is pretty insane. And that's the county in general. That's a countywide number. Within San Jose, it was down 20.9, so almost 21%. Morgan Hill, 0. No change. At least, and I checked those numbers twice. According to the multiple listing service, which is where I get my data from, uh, and just to be clear, the multiple listing service is what all real estate agents put all listings into. So if you're getting data from other things that aren't part of the MLS, you may not be seeing the full picture of the data. So that's where this comes from. So this basically comes from what should be the most reliable source on our local markets, because this is the MLS for Santa Clara County, all of these cities within the county, plus surrounding counties. My MLS region covers a pretty wide swath as the primary MLS system from just north of San Francisco all the way down to Monterey. So just keep that in mind. So there being the exact same number of listings is kind of funky. It seems counterintuitive based on some of the other numbers we're going to see here. But I think a lot of this is a result of folks that are just not putting their homes on the market. Although, because we also saw a drop in new listings in Morgan Hill. So, and I'm not sure what we're seeing here. These other normally when I see numbers like this that we're going to follow up here in a moment, and keep this in mind as we move forward. You usually see more people profit taking on their homes. In my head, when I'm doing math on real estate, when I see real estate home values go to a certain point, I start to expect more listings. I start to expect more people doing profit taking. And I'm just not seeing that. I would expect it more now too, simply because we have these other dynamics at play where you can work from home, right? There's tons and tons of folks I'm working with who are shopping for homes. They used to rent an apartment in downtown San Jose, or they were in Sunnyvale, or renting a house in Sunnyvale, and now they're looking to buy, and they're willing to go to Gilroy and Hollister, and I'm interested. I've been looking in places like Los Banos, where you can get an exceptionally good deal on a house with great internet, and you're ready to do your job if you happen to be someone who could do what you do from really anywhere, as long as you had an internet connection. So when you mix all that together, particularly with what we're going to talk about here in a minute, in terms of what homes are selling for compared to last year, it makes you wonder why more people aren't doing profit taking. And the only other element I can think of is the COVID factor, right? Folks are still concerned about bringing folks into their home. They've got the new variant that's freaking everyone out. And I'm guessing that's what's playing a part. But we'll go ahead and cover the rest of these numbers. And feel free to ask any questions. Comments are up. I have them right here in front of me, so I won't miss any comments or questions that you might have. We have an interesting topic coming up where I'd love to get your feedback. Now, obviously, if you are watching this as a replay, and it seems like the majority of my viewers are replayers. A lot of folks, I get a few folks who come in and actually watch it live, and occasionally will ask questions, but the vast majority of you are watching it after the fact. Don't consider that a limit on asking these questions. Feel free to reach out to me via Messenger or email or at my website at soldbyrobert.com. I really would love to get your thoughts on why you think these various things are happening or why various things aren't happening, just to sort of calibrate me to what people are thinking who don't focus on this stuff every day. Sometimes people who are so entrenched in a particular subject may miss something that someone who's more casually observing is seeing as an obvious thing. So please share that with me. I'd love to hear it. So that covers total active listings. New listings, again, interesting numbers. We have 15% increase in Santa Clara County overall. San Jose saw an 18% increase, and Morgan Hill saw almost a 9% drop. So 79 homes were listed the same time last year, and only 72 listed this year. And that's in July. So remember, July is sort of the peak. We tend to see the most listings come in June in quote unquote normal markets. I don't think we can call ourselves in a normal market. We still see activity. We see crazy top end activity in periods of time that normally weren't over the last few years. So sometimes it's hard to gauge where the activity is going to blossom. In terms of homes sold, we had a 22.5% increase in Santa Clara County overall, almost a 27% increase in San Jose, and a 2.4% drop in Morgan Hill. And I think that is simply a factor of just the continuing low inventory. Um, but then again, in Santa Clara County and these other places, you actually saw drops in the total active listings. Um, you have these total active listings, which are all the listings, and then you have the number of homes that have been added to the marketplace through new listings in that month. And Morgan Hill just isn't delivering. I mean, we're delivering negative numbers compared to the same time last year. In total number of homes sold, I already discussed that, 22.5%. Did I cover that, or was that new listings? 22.5% increase in the total number of homes sold, 26.9% increase, and a negative 2.4% for Morgan Hill, which again, probably the fact that fewer homes are selling is more a factor of inventory than anything else. But also, the sample size is smaller, right? So whenever we're looking at these numbers, if you're looking at a smaller place like Morgan Hill, if you're not getting hundreds or thousands of examples, right, to create your data set, you should put less faith in any conclusions you would draw from that, right? Like, I'm very comfortable drawing conclusions from Santa Clara County data that are broad because it covers the whole county, but it also has a huge sample size. More comfortable with San Jose than Morgan Hill simply because there's more activity there. San Jose is much larger, more populous. There's more transactions going on. So just keep that in mind also as we go through the data. Now, average list price. For those of you, and this one is insane. For those of you that have watched me before, you know that I like to use original list price for this number. Original list price is the price that a home was listed for the first time it was put on the MLS to get sold. And what that typically equates to is the number that a real estate agent promised you in a listing agreement. So you sat down, a real estate agent convinced you to list with them, you agreed on a sales price with them. That's the number that got put into the MLS. I like to use this number because it's the promise number, right? This was the promise I made in terms of a real estate agent talking to a seller. And how close did I get? Now this is, and it also helps set expectations. This tells us what sellers were expecting, and then we can compare it to what homes actually sold for. And of course, it's all good news for sellers, right? Expectations were exceeded in all cases except for Morgan Hill, which is bizarre because Morgan Hill has had the super highest increase in sales price. But anyway, expectations in Morgan Hill exceeded reality. And let's just cover average price for right now, and then we'll cover sales price, and we'll compare these two. So average list price in Santa Clara County up 1.8%, and the current average is 1.616449, 1,616,000 and change. We'll just round that. San Jose up 7.1% from the same time last year. The current average list price of a home is $1,229,842. These are insane numbers, and these numbers scare me because they remind me of exactly what was going on just before the crash last time. So 2006, 2007, we were seeing insane numbers where people were saying things like, how can anyone buy a home when the price of a home is going up way beyond inflation, right? We had inflation of 5% this year. So in other words, if you didn't get a 5% raise, you got a pay cut this year. If you got a 6% raise, you got a 1% pay increase because the cost of everything that you spend your money on went up 5%. Anyway, so then we compare it to average sales price. Average sales price was up, and these are all double-digit numbers across the board, with Morgan Hill leading the pack with the most insane numbers. Santa Clara County saw a 12.8% increase in the average sales price. San Jose saw a 15.3% increase. Morgan Hill saw a 28.3% increase. So the average sales price in Morgan Hill right now is $1,325,000, but the average list price was $1,441,000. So comparing averages, sellers got a little less than they expected. In San Jose, it was $1,301,000 versus $1,229,000, so they got more than they expected. And in the county in general, on average, you got $1,694,000 versus $1,616,000, so you got more than you expected. In terms of percent over under asking price, now this number is not original list price. As I give you percent over under asking price on this one, the number I'm using is the list price that it was when the home got sold. So that original list price is when it was first entered. If there were any changes made to the list price after that, this is reflected in this number. So if a house started off listed at $1,000,000 and then the listing got changed to $800,000, the number that's being used to make this calculation is the $800,000, not that original list price. And the reason why I do that is because I think that usually this represents a number that is more reflective of the market and what buyers are seeing at the time, whereas the other number is something I want to use to also inform you of buyer expectations and real estate agent promises that may or may not end up coming to fruition, right? Okay, so we saw just a dramatic jump across the board on all of these areas. Santa Clara County was at 107.8%, which is a 5.8% increase from last year. San Jose saw 108.1%. So they're getting their full amount plus 8.1%. That was a 6.3% increase from last year. Morgan Hill, interestingly enough, is the lowest here at 105.2, and that's a 4.6% increase. But Morgan Hill has been kind of crazy bloated for a while now, and these numbers are just insane. And one reason why I think we're seeing what we're seeing in Morgan Hill does relate to the willingness of folks and the desire on the part of a lot of folks to not live in downtown San Jose anymore, to not live in the crush of people to the north of Morgan Hill. So they've been relocating to areas that are still relatively friendly for commute. I mean, there's a ton of people who live in Morgan Hill who commute up to San Jose every day. I know folks who work for Cisco, IBM, Netflix, Roku, Apple, all kinds of companies, and they commute from Morgan Hill up to those areas, all the way as Sunnyvale and Redwood City, all the way down to Los Gatos and those areas. So I think this is a good town for folks to pick because it covers both bases. They want to embrace the whole we're working from home thing, and hopefully this is going to last forever. But also if things change and I still need to be able to commute into the office, I'm close enough, right? Or maybe it's a mix of both, because one thing I'm seeing is a lot of companies are saying, all right, you only need to be in the office 1 day a week. We'll pick 2 days a week that are meeting days. And so that added commute becomes far more palatable if they're only doing it once or twice a week. So I think that's one thing that has fed the Morgan Hill beast. And I know I do have clients who fall into that category. They're not as common as the folks looking to go a little further, but they play a pretty big part in what I'm seeing in terms of buyer searches right now. All right, so now we go to days on market. And right now, I mean, we'll still cover this data, but I personally think this is probably the most useless piece of information to know right now, only insofar as to keep an eye on it in case it just goes crazy for some reason and suddenly it's taking forever to get homes sold. This isn't even the real number anymore. Santa Clara County, 14 days. San Jose, 13 days. Morgan Hill, 13 days. Yes, it's all lower than it was last year, but the only reason homes are taking this long to sell, as I've said before, is because agents are artificially extending the time it's taking to get a home sold. And by artificially extending, I mean they're listing it. They are in the listing saying, we will not accept offers until such and such a date. And such a date is typically 10 to 14 days after the home gets listed. So we see 10 to 14 days as the days on market. So this is not a indicator of what the market is doing. This is an indicator of what real estate agents are doing. If they simply listed the home and took them as they come, odds are a lot of these homes would be selling in 2 days and in 3 days and in 1 day. So and the bottom line is there's so much of a crush of buyers that in order to manage it and give sellers the biggest probability of the highest sell number, this is what you have to do. So if you're a real estate agent and you're not artificially extending the time, your reseller should be asking you why, because it wouldn't make any sense to not in the current marketplace. Particularly, there was a home that sold, was it last month, that was completely burned out, literally burned out. You were buying a home that needs to be rebuilt, and it's sold for over $1 million. Didn't that just happen? I seem to recall that going by my news feeds. All right, so now let's go ahead and we can look at overtime tracking for Santa Clara County. And this is just a great way to visualize how have things evolved over time as we just look back over our shoulder. So And look at this. It didn't do its thing. We will fix it. All right, there we go. All right, so we saw an increase in total active listings. Total active listings kind of peaked way back in 2020. We saw a huge drop right back when things, things didn't really go nuts till March, but we saw total active listings kind of peak during COVID simply because there were not as many people able to buy. Notice the home sold number dropping dramatically right after March when things kind of hit. But then we saw this jump as folks kind of got back in. Right now, we are seeing homes sold exceeding the total active listings, which gives you everything you need to know about why our inventories are so insanely low right now. Days on market we can ignore. I don't particularly see that one as a valuable one to look at. Average list price original versus average sales price. We can see that the list price for the past 3 months we've been in this particular situation. Now we had a period of time there where things were looking, and think of this as a more normalized number here. I realize that looks like a huge peak. You really need to look at that as much smaller. This is times when real estate agents entered really, really bad sales data on their, like to the point of theoretically a home listing or selling for, in this case, listing for, they meant to put in 1.2 million and put 12 million, that kind of thing. So that's why those numbers are jerked around. And then as far as percent of asking, the trend line there says it all in terms of just dramatically increasing. But what's also interesting, if we just look back over months, the percent of asking has been dropping really since April. If you notice, right? We're kind of just on par. Wait a minute, is that? Yeah, that's including it. We're kind of on par with June and July. June and July it's relatively flat, but it's actually been in decline. But we're still among the highest rates we've seen. So I don't know if we can call this a trend. If this was a little lower, if we were seeing July numbers continuing this downward trend, maybe I'd be willing to throw some theories around on that. But we've reached this crazy point where the what it's taking to get a home is nuts in terms of buyers out there trying to make it happen. I feel like it's a little less nuts than some of these numbers seem to indicate. When I've almost basically taken the last month off for kid stuff. Actually, today is a good example of kids going back to college. So one of my boys went back last weekend. This weekend, another one's going back. He's going back up to Berkeley. So as soon as I'm done here, actually, we're going to be figuring out packing and getting him up there. So I don't have like a right this week example to give you, but in doing searches, I've still been doing searches for folks and taking a look at properties, but the competitive level seems, while it's still there, it's not as insane as it was just a couple of months ago. All right, let's look at overtime for Morgan Hill. In the case of Morgan Hill, we've got an increase in the total active listings, which is a good thing, a drop in the new listings, which is not, and I still don't understand why we're seeing a drop in this, given the reality of where we're at. And notice how this is a month where things are crossing paths, where homes sold and new listings are crossing. So now we are outselling not just what the total number of homes that are available are, which means we're selling down stock that's been on the market for longer. We're also not replacing them with new homes, which just pushes the inventory down further for you to choose from as a buyer. We're not going to look at days on market. I don't think that's worth our time right now. We did see a really big jump in the average list price expectations, with average sales price actually being below that. So just another demonstration of what we talked about earlier in terms of seller expectations were a little higher than what the market could support over the last month. And finally, percent of asking price. Despite all that, despite the fact sellers may not have gotten what they wanted, they sure did get an awful lot. So I think it's important to see that there is no downturn for sellers. There's a slowdown on some things, but we're still seeing just crazy numbers as it relates to what folks are asking versus what they're getting and the number of offers that are coming in on different properties. Let's see here. Now, The next thing we can cover, I'd love to get a question. I see I've got a couple of folks watching. If you're interested in asking a question or making a comment on any of the data we've covered so far, feel free to ask it in the comments section. That is all up and going. Let me see here. One thing I want, and I realize I do this every time, and it's totally self-serving. And I guess I should apologize, but I'm not gonna. This is my website, soldbyrobert.com is where you can find it. This is a great location for you to find, do an MLS search. I also have a new tool that's going to crop up on my White Law & Sons real estate page on Facebook, where you'll be able to do searches directly from there. Super easy. I like to make it as easy as possible for you to use the power of the MLS. And the MLS is still going to be the best tool out there to find properties in these markets. If you're looking at things like Zillow and Trulia and Redfin, those are all syndication partners for the MLS, right? So they're portals for what the MLS puts out. But agents have the option to check a checkbox and not share listings with Redfin or Zillow or Trulia. So some agents do that, and the bottom line is, if you want to make sure you're seeing all the listings you can see, then you need to be working with the MLS. And this is a great way to do it without getting browbeaten. I'm not going to come chasing you with the hard sell or the hard pitch. So it's a great way for you to see some properties. Just to remind everyone, I write articles pretty frequently, at least a few a month. And I also do a podcast. So if you'd like to check out the podcast, I try to do one at least a couple of times a month. The real schedule that I'd prefer to do would be one a week, but time doesn't often permit me to do that. But I'll cover all kinds of different topics. This one is from January of 2021. The real estate market performance is that article. The most recent one was 5 things affecting where real estate market is heading. So this is one that just kind of talks about the various elements that are playing into our real estate market right now. And of course, there'll always be a link to this live chat event, which obviously is at 0 because we're doing it right now. Let's go ahead and talk. One of the subjects I wanted to hit, and I was kind of hoping I'd have a quorum of people here that would have different opinions on this. But one thing I wanted to do was discuss, eviction moratoriums and all these other kinds of things. I'm surprised there isn't a lot more of an uproar about this. I'm not sure where the government in general gets the authority to take an agreement that exists between a property owner and a renter and circumvent that. There's a contract in place, and I'm not real sure where that power comes from. I'd love to hear more from someone who can explain that to me. I've talked to an awful lot of folks. But one thing that is absolutely clear to me is the CDC is not in a position to make eviction moratoriums on their own. The CDC's role is the nation's public health protection agency. The CDC has certain authorities to implement regulations related to protecting America from health and safety threats, both foreign and within the United States, and increasing public health security. But it only gets it from Congress, right? So click on each public thing. You can. So the bottom line is, none of these people are elected. None of these people have any built-in governmental authority to create law. It all is supposed to come from the federal government on there, as far as that should be happening. But I don't understand how that's a thing. If Congress votes a thing in, and even if that thing ends up being unconstitutional, which in my opinion that is, it would be the CDC, I guess, who could implement it or create a rule around it since it's health related. But I don't see how that's a thing. I don't see how that's a thing that should be allowed. And I get that we're in tough times, but we also have to remember where we are in this. We could have a deeper discussion about what's the authority of the government to basically shut down an economy. I'm not sure what the answer to that is. This is the first time the government's ever done it. A lot of people like to bring up the smallpox outbreak in 1918 or 1919. Well, that's not what happened then. The only time you were restricted to your home was if you were quarantined because you had it. This idea of shutting down everything and telling businesses they can't operate, I'm not real sure I'm on board with that. And I realize this is one of those rails, right? So I occasionally, uh, when I have to, will have conversations with other real estate agents, and I frequently will get agents who want to talk to me about things we've talked about here or in the podcast, and they talk about all the rails you shouldn't touch in terms of talking about real estate, even when those things cross over. Politics, religion, those types of things. And I'm just on the side of what makes sense, and a lot of these things simply don't make sense to me. Particularly on the landlord thing, everyone wants to accuse homeowners who are renting their homes of being the mustache twirling evil folks, and the reality is the vast majority of the people who I have helped buy an investment property or convert their residential home into an investment property because they retired and moved somewhere else. These are all folks who own maybe one or two of these properties, and the intent was to provide safe, uh, clean living for someone who wanted to rent it to supplement their retirement income. Maybe they didn't save up enough, or they did save up enough and decided to invest it in a house because they felt like it would grow more. Whatever the reasoning is, these are folks who rely on that money to survive every bit as much as a tenant relies on whatever they rely on to survive. Uh, and I'm hesitant to come down with this blanket statement that not only should we um, do an eviction moratorium, but then there should be no redress for the owners of those homes who are paying mortgages. Most of these folks don't just own those homes. Most of these folks have mortgages on those homes. And even if they don't have mortgages, they have tax payments they have to make. So, shall we also have a property tax moratorium and a mortgage moratorium? Um, if your political beliefs lean that way for tenants, why doesn't it lean that way for landlords? If you're going to make it free for someone to live in a house, you should make it free for the owner to own the house. That there's an equilibrium there that makes sense. I fundamentally disagree with the idea, but if you're going to do one, it seems like the other one has to be part of that package, right? All right, let's go ahead and jump into some other articles here. So as I said, you can come visit soldbyrobert.com. There's a ton of different URLs that lead here. I believe W and Sons, and I think Sold in Morgan Hill. There's a bunch of different ones, but Sold by Robert, Sold by Me is probably the quickest way to get there. This one was interesting because this is something that could inform the data we review next month relating to August. Home buyer traffic cools in July per data from Showing Time. So Showing Time is pretty big. I mean, there's an awful lot of people who use Showing Time, so I think it gives a pretty good insight into what's coming. And I like to call these leading edge indicators. And stuff like this is leading edge because it is predicting what you will see in terms of real data later. Home buyer traffic is people looking at homes. And in order for folks to buy homes, they look at homes. So if you see a drop in a thing that tends to precede making an offer, that is an indicator that you may see a drop in folks making offers. Hello? Okay, everything went dark. Sorry about that. Everything went dark. The streaming software went dark. My microphone indicator went dark. Everything went dark. It was okay. So back to home buyer traffic. So it's easy to see how this would be an indicator of a potential slowdown in the number of offers being presented. Showtime, the residential real estate industries, the residential real estate industry's leading showing management and market stats technology provider, found that showing activity slowed during July compared to prior months, but still remained at historic levels with 110 markets averaging more than 20 showings per listing during the first 5 days per data from their index. Um, let's see. I could have sworn there was stuff on our area here. Although real estate demand continues to be in historic territory for the first time this year, the showing index posted a 5.3% year-over-year decline in July. The average number of showings per listing have been declining for 4 months now at a faster rate than the typical slowdown in this part of the year. Showings per listing declined 33% from March levels in 2021, while in a typical pre-pandemic year, July would be about 20% slower than March. Um, so a big drop off, and that's kind of what I'm talking about. Some of the most competitive. I've had a couple of deals since March that were not horribly competitive, but they weren't in competitive areas. These were houses that need a lot of love. These were more investor-minded folks or contractor-minded folks. The last one I bought that I did that was move-in ready was, let's see, May or June, I think May, and the competition then was pretty nuts, um, but and it was kind of reflective of what we're seeing there. March isn't obviously June, but I think the point being made here is that we're seeing a slight decline, and this is a decline that will affect not July numbers, right? Because showings in July don't equal sales in July. Showings in July equal sales in August because that takes 30 days for escrow to close, right? So even if they made that offer on July 20th, the odds are it's going to be an August number, right? Unless they paid all cash and closed really super quickly. So I think August numbers are going to be interesting. We're only about 10 days away from being able to review those. We're about a month away, obviously, from doing this again, but it'll be interesting to review those numbers and see where we're at. California July housing sales down 2% year over year. Home sales and prices curb in July. This is from Calculated Risk blog, but they got it from the California Association of Realtors. California's housing market moderated for the third straight month in July, with both home sales and prices tempering from the heated market conditions seen over the past year. So this is a California thing, and our local market is obviously hotter than that. Silicon Valley market has always been one of those kinds of markets that tends to be hotter, but it also is a market where you can make some interesting informed speculations based on what's happening more broadly in the state. While our market tends to be more robust, we do tend to see that things that start happening elsewhere in California eventually start to bleed into our local marketplace. Will that be true in this case? Maybe. We're not seeing dramatic. I mean, it's a 2% sales decrease at a very weird time. I mean, this is not a month. I would not expect July sales down to be down 2% unless there's not enough inventory, right? If sales are down, it would be an inventory problem. But in general, across California, that's not the case. We do have some definite inventory challenges in places like Morgan Hill. We looked at the data for, let's see, for Morgan Hill in terms of inventory, and total active listings has been decreasing, right? But if we look at Santa Clara County, and I'm looking at those, I realize you can't see those numbers. The total active listings is actually up. We're not at the highest point. The highest point goes back to September of 2019, but we are on par. We are the highest in all of 2020 in 2021, and we're creeping up on what the peak was in 2020, when the inventory was artificially getting boosted because people weren't going out and buying because of COVID. So I think that's all interesting stuff. We'll see where it goes. I am in the wrong place. There we go. But this is why I kind of led off this morning with, every once in a while a pivot point comes, right? And I feel like we've got a soft pivot here. It feels like things are making a shift, and I may have said this before on other things in past shows. But I think if you look at this data, it tends to indicate that. Now, not so true here in Morgan Hill, right? We're trying to talk about broad strokes. But one interesting thing is to also take a look at other markets. And it's been interesting to watch Los Banos and Salinas and other communities during this time to get a feel for what prices are doing elsewhere. And I got to tell you, prices are up in these other areas, which I still think are excellent investments. I think there are some deals to be had in these communities. They're great investments if you're looking to have something that you want to rent. I'm also super excited about what we talked. I think we talked about this I either talked about this in our last show or in my last podcast. If I didn't talk about it last time. Let me do. What are they called? They're called folding homes. It's not what it's called. I'm trying to. I could see one of these pods actually being two bedrooms and a bath. But that's what we're talking about. Is anyone else not just kind of excited about that? I think that is an amazing thing. What's also amazing is how historically when homes of this kind are showing up somewhere, there's huge wide load signs that's long, and this is the other way that homes get built. So it's a method I've talked to you about before in past podcasts, where you can save a ton on construction by having factory built housing. And these aren't mobile homes. This is not that. When they're done, they are identical to a stick built home. But something like this, you can pull. But they what the demo they did was they pulled it behind a Tesla. I think. Just happened. All right, now it's back. All right, they pulled it with a Tesla. Now a Tesla is not going to deliver this thing for you, but that basically means You don't have to schedule any funky stuff, pay extra fees. You don't have to go to the city and say, we need to close this road for us to move this stuff through. You don't have to worry about windy roads getting this thing up to where it needs to be. Um, and a buddy of mine built a log cabin out on some remote place. Um, and I want to say when everything was said and done, I think he spent close to this. Uh, so it's so remarkably competitive in terms of attractiveness per square foot. I think this could revolutionize housing. Flip side, I'm toying with buying one and plopping it. I have a little bit more than a half acre lot, and there's tons of room on the back of my lot. I'm thinking about plopping one of these things down so that one of my kids could have a place to live once they get out of college if they end up living local. In-law quarters, and it's all there. It's all self-contained. So very interesting. If I've talked about this before, I apologize, but I think this boxable thing is not only amazing and innovative, and disruptive in a good way. I think it is worth considering for anyone who's interested in investing or even building your own home. I'm all on board. So that these are kind of like in there for me. Let's see, what else have we got? Some other stories that might be interesting. 25 cheapest places to rent. Interesting in that those might represent an opportunity. Typically, when you see cheap rent, believe it or not, the housing there tends to be cheap. So this could be an opportunity for you to, at the same time they're talking about this, discover places where buying a home makes a lot of sense. Now, notice not a single California city here. Average one bedroom rent, $383. Grove City, Pennsylvania. I'm not interested in there. Edinburgh, Texas. Springfield, Missouri. Tulsa, Oklahoma. Conway, Arkansas. These are all too far away. Arizona. Is that Arkansas or Arizona? Is it AK for Arkansas? Or Arizona? It's AZ for Arizona. Sorry. Texas, Missouri, Ohio, Mississippi, Oklahoma. See, sadly, none of these. I prefer west of the Mississippi. So I'm when I'm looking at properties, I know for folks who've been listening to my podcast, I've also looked at Chattanooga, Tennessee. I'm still in love with Chattanooga, Tennessee. That's the one exception. I would seriously consider investing in Chattanooga. Other news items we can talk about this morning. We've got about 15 minutes left. Mortgage rates are still ridiculously good. Let me make a suggestion on mortgage rates for folks that might be searching. What you want to do is go to any of these. Let's see. Where's the bank stuff? Where's my bank stuff? This isn't the browser I normally use. This is my browser for, maybe I just don't have it on here. This is my browser that's set up really specifically for more businessy stuff. But let's see. I think it's Smart Asset. Okay, so let's do Morgan Hill. Man, does the internet slow down when I stream? Maybe I can come up with another way to do that. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll just pick something that's sort of the average, right? We know the average in Morgan Hill now is 1.2 million. Assume you're putting 20% down. Assume you have really good credit. All right, so here's what you've got. Now, when doing a search like this, always be aware of what they're actually showing you. These all say sponsored, so you know they're artificially at the top. What you want to look for is lowest monthly payment. So here you go. 2.625, lowest monthly payment, $3,856 a month for that loan with 20% down. Wonderful, right? And if you're doing a refi, same thing. Make sure to take a screenshot of this. Even if you click this, which lets them know you came from here, when you get there, the loan they're going to offer you is not going to be this loan. It is not going to be 2.625. It is not going to have negative 0.13 points. It will probably have positive points, and the rate will probably be higher. I went through this and for a refi prospect and found I had to prove to them what I was seeing on Smart Asset. They asked for me, even though they feed the data to Smart Asset, they told me I needed to prove to them what I was seeing. But they also said that they weren't going to honor it because I had a HELOC. My HELOC just needs to be put back in a second position, and the lender on that HELOC is willing to do it for a $200 fee. So I asked them, why does that matter if they're willing to take the secondary position with a $200 fee on a refinance? How does that affect the interest rate and the terms of the loan? And they couldn't explain it to me. I believe I'm going to call them out on it. I believe it was Better. Are they even listed on here right now? Yeah, these guys. No origination fees, no application fees, available 24/7. This is one, and I only use their name because that's the one I was dealing with, but I would guess that a huge number of these institutions do the exact same thing. So keep that in mind. They're continuing to ping me. They told me so here's the hoops that I'd have to jump through. Now the rate that I had was better. Rates have gone up a little bit, so I'm not hot to trot right now for a refi, but I'd have to pay off my HELOC. I already talked to the people who underwrote my HELOC. They're willing for me to pay off my HELOC, have it be gone. I do the refi, and then they kick it back on, and charge me the $200 to do that. What, without having to go through any other stuff. So anyway, sometimes you have to think creatively to get things done or to get people to live up to promises they make in portals like this. And you can use any. I have 2 or 3 that I visit on a semi-regular basis. I'm looking for that sweet spot. To be honest, I probably should have exercised that. It was going to take too long to actually mechanically go through the process of getting rid of that loan and then kicking off the refi. The rate I was getting was like 2.4 something. I was getting a ridiculously good rate. Let's just go ahead and say my home's worth, I don't know, 1.2. Let's say I could sell it for average. Let's go down to about what I owe. There you go. See, that's where I like my numbers for a refi right there. So that's actually better than it was when I was talking to folks before, except these folks had fees and the other folks had no fees. So yeah, just make sure to take a screenshot, and make sure to take a screenshot of the whole thing. If you're on a Mac, it's Shift. Basically, what it's spitting out is an aggregate, right? It is, um, let's see here. Here we go. This will show you what we're talking about. Now, I don't believe there's any audio um, directly connecting my desktop to you guys, so we obviously won't be able to see that. Um, I guess you could hear it through my microphone, but it's really not necessary because I want you to see the process that they use. And of course, since I'm streaming, I still don't get why it affects the download speed. You know, when I'm streaming, I'm uploading, right? Well, you know what? So let's go. There's got to be.
That could be a life changer.
Oh, here we go. They were showing some video of it. I want you to see the process. Hello, where's the? Oh, there it was. All right. So, would you get your house 3D printed?
A 4-bedroom property was built with curved walls to minimize humidity and included digital controls for disabled people. Now, short of windows, doors, and a roof.
So there's the stuff.
Or should I say printers got the framework out in 54 hours. Its construction cost, which was £176,000, was 20% cheaper than a standard house of a similar footprint. So what's the potential of a 3D printed house? It's faster delivery.
So if you look at these, we already talked about those elements, but let's look at what it was, right? So it was sandwiched material. You can see that it's got what looks like a concrete material on each, and then on each side it's got this insulation material. I don't know how it'll end up panning out. I've seen other 3D printed home systems that don't do that, that use what looks like a core of some sort of a concrete composite. And I think those are a great way to go as well. I don't know how it'll pan out. It'll obviously pan out in the way that works the fastest, the most efficient, and can be done most quickly. And I understand that the equipment involved is really the biggest bottleneck in the process right now. But I think this is promising. It makes the process of building your own house, or on a large scale, builders building a house using this technology. If you could reduce the cost by 50%, that's pretty awesome. Now, the problem I see there is you won't see all of that, right? Granted, the builder will enjoy a 50% reduction in costs, but if we see local government do what local government normally does, they'll just increase the costs, the regulations relating to building these homes, so that they're taking more money out of the pocket of builders, so that once everything is said and done, you're not getting a 50% reduction in the cost of your home when you buy it that's built. You're getting a 10% reduction or a 15% reduction, which is still great, but there are the usual hands out that screw that process over. And as I've mentioned before, one of the huge problems that builders face now is when they do the math on whether or not it makes sense to build a house, they're having to factor in costs that local and state governments put into effect when things were booming in 2004, 5, and 6. As regulations and costs increased, the government really wanted a slice of that pie, or wanted a slice of the home sales pie. So they instigated these things, implemented them, and then never got rid of them. They should have gone away immediately. One thing I've always thought that would make sense, if all state and local governments went back to what the regulations were in 2001, just go back to that, you would see a blossoming in home construction. Does anyone think that a home that they buy that was built in 2000 is unsafe? Nope. The vast majority of the change wouldn't be how the home got built. It would be how the government pulled money out of that process, which raises the cost for you, right? The government's not doing you a favor when it makes it more expensive for someone to create a product, because no one just eats that when they're making a product. They pass that on to their consumers. All right, folks, we've hit 11 o'clock. I think we've covered some interesting topics. If you've got any questions about what we covered, feel free to reach out. You can do that at soldbyrobert.com. You can just go to the website and click on Contact Robert, And of course, there will be a magical page presented eventually. Honestly, it's not this slow usually. It's just this streaming thing. For you to send along any ideas, suggestions, or questions you might have, I'm happy to hear them. Feel free to reach out. If you'd like to start a home search, you can do it from here. If you would like to start the process of getting your home evaluated to see how much it's worth in today's market, which is probably going to blow your mind, feel free to reach out. I offer two different flavors. I offer the you don't have to talk to me flavor, where you just go in and you put in your address and it gives you a automated response based on automated data, which is never going to be as accurate as a hands-on one, but it's a good guide. Or you can go full Monty and you can ask me to come take a look at your place, do a full assessment, where I also visit other comparable properties, and give you a very good estimate of what that home would sell for. Enough that I would guarantee the price. So in other words, if you don't get the price I say you should get, I end up paying you money for failing to do that, because that should be part of my job, right? I should be judged on some of the major things I'm supposed to be doing for you. Anyway, thanks again for taking time to listen. As I said, reach out if you need to, but otherwise have a fantastic weekend. And I'm going to see about getting my son set up in Berkeley. So have a good day, everyone.